Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, and Lightning Returns all, return to the Xbox this week thanks to Microsoft's backwards compatibility program. But this time, Microsoft's taken things one step further by updating the core assets in one of these games. Now, to talk about this, I wanted to bring on Alex Battaglia. Alex?
How you doing there, John?
Who I know is, the biggest of Final Fantasy fans out there.
Please, just the biggest.
No, I'm just kidding. No. This is interesting because we wanted to bring the PC version into this as well. So today we're going to look at all three games, and I'm going to try to check it out across the different platforms that it showed up on. This is a really exciting day because the results here, super impressive. Yeah. Now, for a little history here, 10 years ago, 2008 is when Microsoft announced on stage that Final Fantasy 13 was coming to Xbox 360, and it was a huge thing.
It was a big deal
for the industry. It was a big deal and something that a lot of people did not see coming. And of course, some of the responses. It's they obviously shot themselves in the foot. I don't know how much the rest of you know about Japanese culture. I mean, I'm an expert, but honor and shame are huge parts of it. It's not like this is in America where you can become, you know the rest.
Yeah.
But yes, this is the thing. People were up in arms, but in the end, it was awesome that it happened, and it was great that more people got to check out the game. And it started something that would kind of go forward with the series and Xbox and all that. And Square Enix is more prevalent on all these systems now. And then it came out.
And that's kind of where, even though obviously people who played just on Sony consoles were probably a bit miffed at the fact that now other people could play their game for some reason, the Xbox 360's original version wasn't perfect in comparison to, say, its PS3 counterpart, was it, John?
No, and so for me, actually, this is one of those moments when I remember awaiting anxiously the Digital Foundry article from our boss, Richard Ledbetter, who poured over these two games and revealed, accurately I might add, that the Xbox 360 version was somewhat subpar for a number of reasons. In my book, I think this probably comes down to the fact that it was developed in a compressed cycle compared to the PS3 version, which had been the lead. And, getting this, the crystal tools, as they called it, to work well on 360 was probably somewhat challenging considering how it was initially designed. So there were compromises.
I mean, we're looking at a lower resolution, right, on Xbox 360?
Yeah, so the main thing is the resolution's dropped at 1024 by 576 on 360 versus 1280 by 720 on PS3, though both of them feature 2x MSAA, which is nice. And then the other really big thing for this specific game, and it comes down to disk space, it's the videos. Final Fantasy 13 has over 3 hours of full motion videos on the disc. That's a lot of pre-rendered movies to play back. And there's still a lot of real-time cutscenes here as well, but you see these videos a lot. And on 360, they're compressed in the BINC 1 format, and they look terrible. They're low bit rate, they're lower resolution, and the game shipped on multiple discs. This was not good. It didn't work well. PS3 version, on the other hand, had these super, super high quality, I guess it's like Sony's H.264 codec perhaps, but it was 33 gigabytes, I think it was, of movie files, of just movie files on that PS3 Blu-ray, and they were almost indistinguishable from the actual real-time scenes, so it made the whole game feel really seamless. So when Microsoft said, okay, now Final Fantasy 13, it's enhanced for X, it's coming to Xbox One, I was both excited but also kind of nervous because I'm thinking there's a lot of pre-rendered videos there, and those 576p videos are not going to look very good next to the high-resolution gameplay, but they took the extra step, and this is what I think is so unprecedented about this release. They've updated the movie files.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is something we don't even see on the PC version of the game. We're still kind of stuck with these lower resolution FMVs on PC that aren't that great looking. We don't have access to the PS3 ones as far as I could find online. So this is a great boost, I guess, for people who own an Xbox One X.
Yeah, absolutely. So I compared them directly, the FMVs here first, and now this is something you're not really going to be able to see on YouTube just because of the added YouTube compression, but I'll try anyways. They look very, very, very comparable, I still think the PS3 videos are slightly cleaner overall with a few less macro blocking going on, but my guess is what they've done is sort of transcoded those original PS3 files over to the BINC format at a much higher bit rate and higher resolution, being 720p this time, like the original PS3 cutscenes, and essentially inserted them into the game. So that means the file size for Final Fantasy 13 is now 30 gigabytes on Xbox One, whereas it's just under 15 gigabytes on 360. And I should note that you get these FMVs on both Xbox One and Xbox One X.
But what about the rest of the game, like the real-time components?
Well, it's just as you'd expect. It goes from 576p up to 1728p. Which, it's not quite 4K, of course, but it's 1728p with 2x MSAA. So in practice, it looks extremely clean, and it is a huge step up from the original version and the PS3 version. So it kind of winds up feeling like, I guess if they had released a remaster for the game, that's kind of what this looks and feels like with the new FMVs plus the higher resolution. They also did some things like certain interface elements like text. They do a nearest neighbor scale on it, so it's kind of pixelated, but it actually looks, it's better. It almost gives it a retro feel in a way, like old school Final Fantasy pixel art. Not all of the art has it, but it's cool when you see it, and it works.
I'm under the impression that the PC version just uses actually a normal bilinear filter, and it's actually, I think, some of the text is tied to your anisotropic filtering texture settings as well, because I think they're probably like arrayed in an atlas or something like that. But yeah, on PC, I mean, there was the original release on PC was in 2014, and it was really problematic when it came out. It was locked at 720p. It had like a semi-unlocked frame rate where it would dip all over the place. And over time, and due to community modders, it was able to be at least brought up to whatever resolution you choose, but the frame rate is still a problem on PC. So if you play it these days, it's probably going to be at 30 FPS, much like this Xbox One version. So the differences that you're going to be seeing between the PC version that is out there right now and this re-release on Xbox One X aren't actually that great. You get obviously things like better MSAA support on PC, but for the most part, this game looks nearly as good on Xbox One X, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's cheap too, by the way. I found copies locally. I originally had it on PS3, but I found retail copies of the game for $4.99 for 13 and 13.2. Yes, but okay, I guess the other thing we need to talk about then, you mentioned performance. It's still not possible to get 60 FPS on the PC.
Maybe with some crazy PC that is like 5 gigahertz or something like that, but possibly, but probably not.
Okay, though, let's talk about performance. First, I was a little bit constrained in terms of what content I had available. I tried to get the save files to work, but I've never played the game on 360 before, just on PS3, so we're starting from the beginning. So in this very first scene, weirdly, the PS3 version struggles more than the Xbox 360 version. Specifically, when they do this close-up of lightning, you kind of get those, it drops to 20 briefly there on the PS3. And, neither version runs completely consistently in this game. And it's not terrible. It's consistent enough in Final Fantasy 13, but you're going to get some slowdown. And unfortunately, again, I don't have a save for Chapter 11 where you open up into the large world, but I definitely remember that dropping some frames before, and I'd imagine it's the same on 360, which is where Xbox One X comes in. And almost all of these issues have been completely wiped away. The performance feels almost completely consistent, save for a few hitches or skips that can pop up every once in a while.
I think that's the same, though. On PC, there's moments where it feels like a frame drops all of a sudden, or maybe the camera ticks at the improper rate is what I was thinking, too. I'm not sure, but I think it's something just universal to this engine after all these years. It wasn't the perfect engine when it came out, and it's just... Now it's better, but it's always going to be the way it was, I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right. There's still a few, rough spots in there, but overall, I think the performance is really good on Xbox One X, and I did test it on Xbox One S as well. And in Final Fantasy 13, it's similarly good. I think it can drop a little bit more, though, but it does seem faster than the 360 and PS3 original versions. So that's kind of like a win in terms of performance. We went from the worst version of Final Fantasy 13 by far, and I think this is now possibly the best version. Then it runs better, it looks better. It's still a beautiful game, and in fact, I think that's something we should talk about real quick. It's just the look of the game. It's very unique.
Yeah, it's kind of, you were describing it as like this kind of otherworldly look, especially the intro sequences, were kind of lost in the later Final Fantasy series, like Final Fantasy 15, which came out. Obviously, it takes place in this, unique and wonderful looking world, but it doesn't have this weird alien kind of look to it. And it's really, the high frequency texture detail is just brought out by the extreme change in resolution that you see here. And there's almost no surface in the game that looks kind of plain. Everything is just, I don't want to say noisy because that makes it sound negative, but there's just a great density to the textures in the game, and it looks really, when it's clean, it looks so good. Like this opening mech here that you're fighting, I love the way it looks.
Yeah, and it just it continues. The next, there's this inside the Fal'Cie, when it crashes down and the lake freezes over, and there's more stuff after that. I mean, it starts to look a little more traditional when you get down to Grand Pulse. But in general, the game kind of has this unique otherworldly look. And I think part of this also stems from the way they use the engine. We were talking a little bit about materials, like the textures and the cloth that they go for. And it's not that modern. It's obviously limited in a lot of ways. And you could sort of see the low polygon count shining through. But things are kind of diffuse enough and well lit and well color graded in such a way that I feel it really holds up well. I mean, a lot of games from this era, 2008, 2009 period have this super shiny, heavy specular look to them that I don't feel has aged all that well. And that is not the case here. It really has a nice, attractive look to it. Like, it's not super high end anymore by any means, but it holds up.
Yeah. The art shines through the higher res it is. You're not spending time looking at things like shadow resolution, especially, or things like that, or the fact that the shaders look problematic. It just looks good.
I agree. It's like you blow up something like Gears of War 2 to 4K, like we've done on Xbox One X, and it doesn't hold up that well. You really sort of see the issues with the underlying art and the style that they went for at that time. But then you look at this, and this looks great. And you mentioned the hair, by the way, and that's another thing that's kind of improved by rendering at higher resolution.
Yes.
They use alpha to coverage on the hair, so it kind of has that grainy appearance, the dithered, stippled look, and that is massively improved by rendering the game at a higher res.
Yeah, this is one cool part where the PC version you could pump up the MSAA to 8x or probably even more with transparency, super sampling, and things like that, and it always looked really good. Although, once again, this is an area where the PC version was kind of broken when it came out. You can find screenshots of it online, but if you didn't have MSAA set correctly, or you had a specific GPU type, it would give people really fat looking eyelashes and eyebrows and hair. It looks so creepy. But yeah, so this is a great version, I'd say. And do you think these kind of changes carry over to the versions afterwards with 13.2 and Lightning Returns?
Yes, so this is interesting then. So Final Fantasy 13.2 came first. It was released in late 2011 in Japan, but then it came out early the following year elsewhere. And it's an interesting follow-up that tries to solve some of the issues that people complained about in the original game. It's a little more open-ended, has this whole time mechanic thing going on, different characters this time.
John, I don't understand the stories in these games. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You don't have to. It's completely insane. If you got to go watch the intro to Lightning Returns, by the way, and you're just gonna be like, you're not even gonna. You probably just fall out of your chair. But the point is, though, the game's Final Fantasy 13.2 still looks good, but I always felt that they pushed the engine in a way that it wasn't as well suited. So obviously, it's more open now. And that also comes with more performance dips in its original form. The 360 and PS3 versions, especially 360 though, the frame rate is not great. It's kind of all over the place. But at the same time, 360 was upgraded to 720p. The FMV thing was not an issue because they used so few FMVs this time, and the game comes in a little over 7 gigs on both consoles.
Wow, I'd say that's a benefit for the time period, both for this new version that's coming out, but also just smaller file size, and real-time cutscenes are something I always prefer. Yeah.
Exactly, and most of them are real time. It's just, you get a lot of slowdown in them now. So the good news then is when you move over to Xbox One X, it's native 4K now, and that's because it was 720p on Xbox 360. So it's higher res than 13, and it looks extremely crisp and nice. It's a huge upgrade. I should also mention, by the way, if you're playing on an Xbox One S or a regular Xbox One, you get the original resolutions of the 360 version here. So you do get the better FMVs in 13, but the resolution is still going to be exactly what it was previously. But so obviously Xbox One X is where you're gonna want to play if you want the higher res, and it works. And the main thing for me here is that the performance is a lot better. It's not perfect, but as you can see, a lot of these drops that we encountered originally are massively cleaned up, and it is so much better looking than it did in motion than it was in the original form. So yeah, that is excellent. Also, something interesting that I kind of had forgotten about, but this really kind of made it hit home, region locking. So for 13.2, I went out and bought a German disc, which has English in it, of course. Popped it into my American Xbox One X with my US account on it, and it downloaded and played perfectly. No problem. I popped it into my 360 and error. Basically, it's region locked. So I don't think I've mentioned it before, but this is kind of something to celebrate in a way, in that if you're playing a backwards compatible game on Xbox One, it seems to get rid of any region checks for both original Xbox and Xbox 360 games. So if it's supported, you can buy any physical copy of the game and use it. I guess there's also that PC release.
I haven't looked at the PC version here, but it did launch in a better state than Final Fantasy 13 did. It still has things like frame rate inconsistencies, so you're not going to be getting the best 60 FPS experience on pretty much any PC out there. But this is still one where the Xbox One X and the upgrade that we're seeing here puts it really close to that PC version that's out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like, just the fact that it's native 4K now, it's totally comparable. And again, you get that same sort of nearest neighbor upscale on a lot of the UI elements, which I think looks pretty good. Performance, like I said, it is a lot better. It's not perfect. There's definitely still dips. But yeah, overall, this one impressed me the most in terms of just the massive upgrade in terms of performance and image quality. It's really nice. And I should also mention that I believe this is where Tri-Ace maybe contributed to the development somewhat, and they would go on to help even more with Lightning Returns, which I think is where we're going next.
And moving over to Lightning Returns, you're seeing these same upgrade, putting it up to 4K now with that 2x MSAA. And is the performance improved there, John?
So I haven't put quite as much time into this one as the others, but everything I've seen thus far suggests, yeah, the performance is indeed smoother again. It's native 4K again. But weirdly, it's kind of the worst looking Final Fantasy 13 game in a lot of ways. I'm not sure what's going on here. I mean, they added some cool cloth physics here on Lightning out of the gate, but the game has a very flat look in a lot of scenes that kind of surprised me, and it does sort of betray the fact that it was likely a lower budget project. It still looks good, and it was built up. It's all new assets and such. I think this is where the low poly dog came from. Pretty sure it's from this game.
I was gonna ask, how high res is that low poly dog?
I haven't seen him yet in this version, but he's probably
he's out there.
He's probably looking a little more angular than before. He's got sharp knees. So, but yeah, so that's kind of the thing there. So,
yeah, I mean, do you think it has to do with the choice of like colors in the game world itself? I mean, what I remember from watching of the game is that it's kind of a bit more singular tone, not as kind of less, intense greens and blues and multiple colored objects in them, but it kind of almost took on that tone and style that a lot of games had from that era with like more monotone. Is it, or is that just my impression?
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing for me is it's just there's a lot of flat surfaces, and the game is overwhelmingly brown in a lot of scenes. Like it's kind of a drab looking world, drab looking game, and it just feels less fleshed out, I think, than the previous games visually, though it does have some larger environments in it, which, trying to push in that direction may have also presented a limitation of what the engine could achieve.
Or just even artist time.
Yeah, or
you know,
artist
making sure
time
those
as
larger
well.
spaces look great. You know, it's hard.
So it's not a bad looking game by any means, but I do feel like you can kind of see it feels to me like you can see the budget decline with each game. Final Fantasy 13 admittedly is extremely linear. There's not a lot more to it than that. But every place you go and all the scenes, everything it feels so lavish and just beautiful most of the time, and that's really cool. And then you get to 13.2 and there's a little less of that, but it's still pretty impressive. And then by the time you get to Lightning Returns, things just kind of start to look a little flat and not great. It's not the best looking game, but it's an interesting game. I like it. But yeah, that's kind of really it. We've been a little bit all over the place for this, but that's just kind of the nature of it. I think overall what we have here are 3 amazing re-releases for Xbox One X backwards compatibility. And in fact, these are 3 of the most impressive ones I've seen yet, in the sense that, well, first of all, adding new assets to 13, unprecedented, and that sort of opens the box for the future. I don't know how many games this would actually work for, and what the limitation is on what assets you could even sort of inject into the game. But it's cool to know that Microsoft is absolutely willing to go the extra mile to do this kind of thing. And it's for that reason that I almost feel like all you would need to do for this is really, if this had an updated high-resolution UI, you could slap this on a disc and sell it as Final Fantasy 13 Remastered, because it feels very much like that. And because, it's very, very cheap to buy. Even on the Xbox store, Final Fantasy 13 was only $7.99 in USD.
Nothing.
And you can get retail versions for less. So, yeah, it's a great value for that. And then, the other games as well, they all look and run much better than they did before. And they just work really well on there. So, if you are hankering to play some 13 again, it's not a bad way to go. And honestly, jumping back into 13, I played like 4 or 5 hours yesterday. It starts out very slow and basic, but in a world where we're surrounded by open world games everywhere, I kind of appreciated the fact that this was just a straight linear progression. You're just following the story, and it's kind of like, okay, this is a breath of fresh air. In this modern age, I appreciate that more. When this came out in 2009, everybody was looking towards open world games, but now that we've had a decade of open world, this feels pretty great. Yeah. I don't mind it.
I mean, I agree. Like, it has an ending, that's something that I can appreciate.
Exactly. But I think that's going to do it for now. Thanks for joining me on this one, Alex.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure, John.
And if you did enjoy this video, as always, be sure to give us a like, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, hit that notification up there, and follow us over on Twitter. And until next time, this is John and Alex signing off.